This is Scott Spears, and today we remember the First Lady of Comedy, Phyllis Diller, who has passed away at age 95. Phyllis was a groundbreaker in the world of stand-up comedy. With her fright wigs and raucous laugh, she was an American treasure. She guested on this program over 30 times in the last 10 years. She did her last public interview, to my knowledge and to most other people's, on this program 1 month ago, celebrating her 95th birthday. Joining us to remember her is her longtime manager and friend, Milt Suchin. Milt, how are you?
Good. How you doing, Scott?
Doing pretty well.
Good.
We talked before we went on the air here about Phyllis's last interview, and to most people's knowledge, I think it was on this program.
I believe it is. I believe it is. Yours was the last interview with her. As I have the distinction now, from her son told me that I had the last dinner with her. I obviously didn't realize we were going to be having the last dinner, but she was the same lady I've known for 33 years that I've managed her. We had a fabulous time, especially when we talk about the old days and the experiences of being on the road. A lot of times I went on with, she always had a road manager that traveled with her, but occasionally on some engagements I would go out, and just being in the plane with her was hysterical. You sit there and cry from laughter. Physically hurt when you sit with her. It's just incredible.
Well, that's what I've told most people. I've said that when they've said, "Was she ill?" I say, "Listen to the interview we did a month ago. She was perfect and funny as ever."
Yes, she was. I mean, unfortunately, age it started to show. I mean, she was frail. She was always diminutive, lady, but she came from strong stock, that Germanic stock, and was a strong lady. There was a time when clinically she was dead for a couple of minutes, and they brought her back and inserted a pacemaker years ago. She's had complications, but she always rose to get stronger and better and go on. As recently as, I believe it was about a year ago, she was on, she recurs on Family Guy. Also last year, she did another stint on Bold and the Beautiful, on a recurring character, where she was a gardener, and a main lead couple of Bold and the Beautiful were passing by as she was working in the garden, working with the plants of this family's home, and they were talking about getting married, and she piped up, says, I'm a justice of the peace. I can marry you. And she wound up marrying them in their home on the set, and so she had a great joy of life, obviously, and just lit up the stage. There's never, ever, and I've been doing this a long time myself, ever heard a bad word ever said about Miss Diller.
Absolutely. It's interesting there, Milt, you brought it up. In the last year, in the last 365 days, she had a pretty busy year. Maybe that's why this seems like a shock to most people, even though she was 95. She traveled to Hawaii and did Roseanne's Nuts last fall. She did Rosie O'Donnell last fall in Chicago, and she did Bold and the Beautiful earlier on this year. At what point did things start not to be so good?
I guess within the past couple of months. It wasn't that it wasn't so good. It was just that it was more difficult for her to stand. She did hurt her wrist from a fall, and that, I guess, contributed to the downward spiral, if you will. But her spirit has always been up, and as I say, I just saw her myself, and we had dinner, and it was pretty normal. But as a matter of fact, I think it was a month or 2 months ago, she called and said that Rosie O'Donnell was coming over to the house for lunch, and why don't we all get together for lunch, and you don't miss an opportunity like that to have these two ladies. Again, it's a very, it was off color, but it was quite a comedy fest between the two of them. And that's another thing. Miss Diller never, ever cursed on stage, never said, a dirty, filthy word, as a lot of comics today do, to get that laugh. She was just genuinely funny, and her self-deprecating humor was the first of its kind, and it always worked. Where somebody like Don Rickles, who's a genius, who makes fun of people in the audience and other individuals, outwardly, Phyllis attacked herself. She was that self-deprecating humor, making fun of the housewife, etc.
You know, you're absolutely right, Milt. And I guess I want to get back to this idea of her. How did you know that she was going to be leaving us? Were you shocked when you heard of it? Like you said,
very much so.
Yeah,
very much so. Because I had planned to see her again. We had some other business dealings to talk about and some other ideas, and it was just a total shock. Because she's always come back from any kind of illness, any kind of sickness. She just is so good about it and always took care of herself. And, when her son called me, he was over there at 9:30 in the morning on Monday and called me and said she's gone. And, I'm still sick about it. I get that feeling in my stomach, just really terrible.
Did he have any idea this was coming? Did anybody?
I don't believe so. None of us want to believe it if it was. I don't think so.
A lot of questions have been asked about what she passed from. Does anybody know?
I don't think anybody knows. She did die peacefully. She just passed in her sleep. So I don't know. It could have been a stroke. I think there have been some incidents of maybe mini strokes, as a lot of people have. And the educated guess is that she had a mini stroke and it became fatal.
But she was fine the night before, as far as you know.
As far as I know, I wasn't there, so I can't say there's a staff there all the time, 24/7, and probably was also staying there, I believe, that night. But she was fine. I mean, it's just a sudden shock.
How did you meet her, Milt?
I used to work at a talent agency, International Creative Management, ICM, one of the largest, still one of the top 5 agencies in the world. And I used to work in Booker, and one day, I decided to go out in the management business and scheduled a meeting, went over to the house, sat down with her, and explained to her I'd love to manage her. And she was a good businesswoman as well, and said, I don't have a manager. What do I need a manager and pay additional commission? I said, let's work out a deal that you'll work less and make more money every year. And that was our handshake, and we just had a great time. And she was my first client back, I think it was 1979.
What was she like in private? When you had that dinner with her a couple weeks ago, what was that like?
Well, we were talking about the old times, as they say on the road. We talked about my son. She talked about her family. We talked about, I'm working in the garden. Excuse me. We're talking about plants. She was a great, garden aficionado herself. We were talking about just normal topics that everybody else was, but of course it always got around to all the different incidents and fun things that we did on the road. And she used to have a fake cockroach. It was a cockroach, and it was attached to a magnet. So we'd be sitting at a dinner somewhere, let's say out of town, with all these dignitaries. She put the cockroach on there, and underneath she would slide the magnet across quickly, and the cockroach would go shooting across while people were eating, and they would jump up. And that's her type of humor. In a hotel room, they used to, I don't know if they still do, they slide on the toilet seat that round paper little ring that indicated that the housekeeper was there and had cleaned the room and all that. Well, she would slide it off when she went to the bathroom, and if she was in Vegas for 2 weeks, she would always slide it back, and the staff would think she never went to the bathroom. That was her kind of humor. Or sometimes when she had stuff in there, she wanted anybody to come in there. She was painting or doing some artwork or laying out her material on the bed or anything. She'd put a sign outside, "Do not enter poisonous snakes." And nobody ever entered.
Oh. Milt, when she was touring, how many dates a year was she working? She worked well into her 80s.
She worked well into her 80s. The last concert was in 2002 in Las Vegas at the South Point Hotel, and that became the Goodnight, I Love You documentary that won the San Diego Music Festival. Greg Barson directed and produced a brilliant, documentary that's available to the folks out there, I'm sure on Amazon and other places. But she was working, to answer your question, 40 weeks a year.
Wow.
I mean, all the time, and she loved it. She just loved it. But she would do a lot of different things. She'd be lecturing, she'd be doing her stand-up, and we had booked her a lot in symphonies. She was doing a lot of symphonies. She was a concert pianist, and she played the saxophone, which a lot of people don't even know about. She played a mean sax.
Why did she retire? I mean, 84, certainly that's getting up there, but why did she retire?
The truth is, she said to me one day, I can't remember all my material on stage. I don't want to go out there and embarrass myself or the audience. Mm-hmm. You know, I know it's my time not to do that anymore, so I can't do that.
And that was it.
And that was it. But she was still in demand. I mean, people still wanted to go on television, and she did, different shows, and she loved voiceovers, A Bug's Life, and, Family Guy. Those are some of her favorite shows, the voiceover material that she did. She loved that because she didn't have to remember lines. She read them.
Milt, I wanted to ask you this because she told me one time that she didn't like to travel anymore, and that she was very selective, and that she turned down a lot of really good things that she would have liked to have done if she had been younger. What did she turn down? What's some of the stuff she turned down?
Well, there was some specific honor engagements back east. There were things overseas, London tours that they wanted to do touring in theater. She just didn't have, obviously, the stamina. But it for everybody else as well as her, even though her status is of a star, the TSA would put us through securities. That was unbelievable. I mean, towards the end, she was wearing a wig, and they would make her, make her take a wig off. It was very debilitating experience, and it wasn't fun anymore. When we used to travel before, we went right through. There was no really security, and you went up there, and we sat in the lounge, and just had a fun time waiting for the flight, and the flight was great. Now, you take your shoes off, and it wasn't fun traveling. That was a big problem.
Mm-hmm. I remember when she retired, she was going to do a play, I think with Jim J. Bullock, if I'm not mistaken, and she never did end up doing any theater work. Was there any reason for that?
It just was too strenuous. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of clients that I had that find certain types of plays too difficult to do, especially a musical. Some other artists, one of my other clients is Shirley Jones, and it's just really tough. She's 78, and she's offered Broadway musicals all the time. It's just very tough today, and she just had a knee replacement, as a matter of fact. But to answer your question, it was so difficult to do these plays, the memorization of the lines, walking around, back and forth, and she decided, I'm going to go out and, stay home and paint. It's something she really loved to do. She loved jazz. She was a jazz aficionado, and the house was always full of music. And every once in a while, we can coerce her to play the piano, which was just a thrill, a thrill.
And she was great. I mean, I remember she did things that were, the shows weren't great, like Star Dates, but she was hilarious in it.
Well, she was great. As a matter of fact, the fellow she met who passed away, a colonel who was just a fabulous, strapping guy, and I used to tease her. So why don't you go out with him again? Well, he's not my type, or whatever she said at the time. But she made fun of. She had a good time no matter what the situation was. And Stardate wasn't maybe the greatest, but it was. She turned it into fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Who were her close, her intimates in her life at the end?
She had a lot of very close friends throughout, from Carol Burnett to Joan Rivers to Rosie O'Donnell to Roseanne, because that was something that, at her age and in her condition, to go to Hawaii, I was amazed. But that was a friend, and for a friend, she'd do anything, and that's why she flew over to Hawaii to go and do the show. And they remain really good friends throughout that. Nancy Reagan, she had a lot of very close friends. She had too many friends. I mean, she was beloved, and everybody loved her, and everybody wanted to be a friend. There wasn't enough time in the day or in the evening to go out for all the dinners that she was in demand.
Milt, you had said you talked business with her at your last meeting a little bit. Was there anything that she thought about doing that was coming up, or things she was interested in?
Well, what we were talking about is a movie on her life, and that's something that I'm going to still continue to pursue. But that was something we talked about because based on her book, there's a lot of things that she revealed that I was a little surprised that. I mean, she's a very honest woman, so she revealed all these things. So one of the ideas was a motion picture based on her life.
You know, Milt, that book that she wrote, and I want to mention the title, Like a Lampshade in a Whorehouse, it's a great title, but it's a great book.
Yes.
And it's very revealing. And one thing, and I talked about this earlier on in the week with Rip Taylor, who I know was one of her close friends,
yes,
that she had a kind of a peculiar relationship with a couple of her kids. And Rip says he never could really understand that because she was such a lovable woman.
Well, I don't know the personal relationships, really. I mean, that was something I didn't get involved with, and I can't answer to that. But she was a great mother. Everything I saw, she was a great mother.
Yeah.
Perry can speak to that, but, her son.
Absolutely.
But I wasn't really involved in a lot of that. She had some terrible tragedies in her life with her son Peter, her oldest son, who passed away. I believe it was a heart attack, and Stephanie, her daughter, I think she was 53, died in the house, had a major brain aneurysm. And so, this tragedy, and comedy is based on tragedy in real life.
What's your favorite personal story, Milt?
Well, there's so many. One of the fun things is I can remember because I got a phone call from a doctor, a medical doctor named Dr. Donald Levy, and he called me the other day to extend condolences, and I haven't talked to him 25 years probably, and he made me chuckle because at my wedding in New York over 30 years ago, we were saying goodnight to everybody, and there was a line of people, and Phyllis and her date, Dr. Levy, were online, and there was a terrible crash on the outside of the temple, and everybody came running outside to go see what happened, and it was Phyllis's limo driver he was either drunk, fell asleep, or whatever, was too old, crashed into the side of the building. So that was the end of my, thank God the wedding service was over. I mean, it's one of those funny stories. And the other thing I was telling Perry the other day reminded me that we were on the road. We were on a ship. We were on a cruise, and she was performing. And we were going to go to the island, and you got to go downstairs to the belly of the ship, or the section where you wait for the tender, and it takes you over to the island. Now, we had a road manager that was with us, this gal, and Phyllis and I and the road manager on my left, and there's a whole bunch of couples and all that, and the road manager was dark-skinned, and I turned to Phyllis and I said, I can't wait to get another one of these slaves. I've never heard of an island, the Caribbean island, allowing people to buy, humans like this. And the couple next to us, I heard the woman turn and said, Murray, you can buy people here. We should think about this and bring somebody back with us. True story. She kicked me because she said, why do you do that to people? And the last thing, I got to remember another great one. In Atlantic City, after her show, we were all back in the suite and just having a good time and talking and kicking back. And that was during, I wasn't drinking. I was a teetotaler then. I made up for it, but I was a teetotaler then, and I was drinking grapefruit juice. I was like on a grapefruit juice kick, and that's all I was drinking. And I was drinking there, I was drinking my grapefruit juice during the evening, and after a couple hours, I was so wobbly, I couldn't even stand up straight. What I found out later is she was pouring secretly vodka in my grapefruit juice all night.
I think people can probably relate to these stories because she was just funny all the time.
All the time. It wasn't you could throw something out at her, a saying, an expression, and she'd have a retort that would put you on the floor.
Mill, I wanted to ask you two quick things here. Mm-hmm. One of the reports was that she was on hospice care. Do you know if that's true or false?
I know that I can't answer to that because I wasn't there, and it wasn't when I was there, certainly at dinner. But I remember, we always had staff there, and I think after she hurt her wrist, that there was a nurse practitioner or somebody over there. But again, I don't know because I wasn't there.
Right.
I didn't talk to her after I was on the road myself. I just came back over the weekend, so I didn't talk to her, and I didn't know what was going on.
Do you know? Had you talked to Perry about that, or is that just something that
I didn't? It's not something that's appropriate.
Right. Absolutely. Have the plans been made? Funeral plans, memorial plans?
We haven't made any plans. There will not be a funeral. And we're all talking, everybody's calling, offering their homes, offering their comedy clubs, offering studios to have a memorial in which we're considering. But there's no rush to do that. We want to do the right thing at the appropriate time. There's so many people on the list. There are different levels of friendship, as you know. All the comedians are, all want to come and do something, and so we're trying to figure out what we're going to do. We haven't decided exactly.
Was there any reason there was no funeral?
This was something that I don't know. I don't know the reason that I was told there's not going to be a funeral.
Has she been buried or cremated? Do we know that?
I want to keep that part private.
I understand that. Final question, Milt.
Sure.
How are you going to remember her?
As a gracious, beautiful woman who is one of my favorite people in the world, who was sensitive, who was compassionate, and above all was the queen of comedy, who broke the glass ceiling, who got out there amongst those male comics, the tough guys, and she's just a wonderful person. She was, off camera was not the caricature on stage. She was a grandmother. She was a pianist. She was a musician. We just had a great old time. Some of the great times was just going to local thrift shops. That was something she loved to do. And when people saw, I once took her, and just a quick story, I was out on the island, and it's one of those discount places that used to be there. And I took her in there one time. She wanted to look at some shoes, and it was a vast place. But somebody recognized her, and then it was chaos, And she was always very accommodating. She would sit there all day just signing autographs if people wanted, or taking those, pictures that everybody wanted. But I remember her just as a fabulous lady, and who's left an indelible, mark on my heart. And it's taught me so much. I didn't teach her. She taught me an awful lot of things.
And she kept a lot of stuff too, didn't she, Milt? She kept a lot of outfits and
yeah, she donates a lot. She donated all the time. Anytime a charity would call, and it was a lot, they wanted to get one of her boas, or wanted to get one of her paintings, or wanted to get one of her scripts. She was always very accommodating when it came to that. But she donated her joke file, which is extensive, to the Smithsonian, and UCLA has some stuff, and she was always very magnanimous that way.
Before we get out of here, I can't thank you enough for being on with me. It's been fun to remember this wonderful lady.
Well, it's fun for me too, because she's wonderful.
Well, and I want to tell this story because I haven't told it, and it's in her own words, which is much better than mine in the interview we did a month ago. But 95, I thought, I hope she's still feeling okay and funny.
Sure.
And we got to the end of the interview, and I'll never forget it, and people can check out the interview. We were talking about death. I said, Phyllis, at 95, are you scared of death? And she said, no. She said, and I said, well, where do you go when you die, Phyllis? And she said, I've died 3 times. You don't go anywhere, so don't expect it. And I said, well, Phyllis, didn't you do Celebrity Ghost Story? And she said, yeah. And I said, so you believe in ghosts, but not an afterlife? And she said, for the money they paid me, I temporarily believed in ghosts. And that laugh followed, and it was great.
Well, that was a joke, because she really did believe in that ghost, and that ghost, I think it was Calvin Coolidge's wife, if I remember, would haunt the outside of the Coolidge porch, as she called it. In the evening, there would be the spirit of his wife. I've never seen her, but she said she's out there. No, she meant it. That was a joke about the money. I mean, that was really true. She believed in that ghost. And as far as the afterlife, nobody's come back and told anybody yet what it's like. But as somebody, Marshall Burrell, who is Milton Berle's nephew, and I are good friends, and he owns a company called Laugh.com, Laugh.com, and that's a site for all kinds of comedic material, all the shows, all the albums that all the comics have done. When he sent condolences in his email, and he said, "Well, I'm so sorry," et cetera, and I guess she's up there now trying on Milton's dresses, which I thought was great.
That's great, and you know, I'm sure she lived every moment to the fullest. There's nobody like Phyllis Diller. There's never going to be another.
And there never
Phyllis
will
Diller.
be. There's no, because she already broke the mold. You know, there's nobody else can come along and be the first of maybe something else. The uniqueness is really what's special in our business, and she was the first one to do that. Now, there have been people that have copied her, but she was the original. She was the original Lady Gaga. She was the original Madonna. All the craziness and the outfits and all those things. It didn't bother her. It didn't bother her to talk about plastic surgery. She was honest. She was always honest.
And she never got old.
No, not really, because the material was always updated, whether it went from Michael Jackson to Lady Gaga. The material was always changed and updated. She's always that way. She was very, very smart. She was very erudite. A lot of people don't know that. She was so well read. She knew about almost all the subjects, and I learned so much from her, especially when she used to send me back when I'd send her a letter with a contract, with a check or something. She would grade my paper, and if I made grammatical errors, I would get a B plus, C. Very rarely did I get an A, so I felt like a dunce. But she used to love to do that, and then the pronunciation of words. She was so good at that, and I can exemplify with one word that the majority of people, including broadcasters, get wrong. Excuse me. They say bouquet. The word is bouquet. And I learned that from her.
And you know what I'm going to miss, Milt? The Christmas cards.
Yes.
Oh, every year. That was when I thought, hey, I'm not doing too bad if I'm getting a Christmas card from Phyllis Diller.
Absolutely. But she was genuine, and
Hey, Milt, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Scott. My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.